Why not advocate that every school in America have an opt-out form? You were on a school board, you would hire experts and have expert voices. Why not just opt out for yourself rather than tell other parents what they can and can't? Those are less than 3% of the public school enrollment, 600 of those complaints, 2 people.
Joy Reid had a sit down where she's talking with Moms for Liberty co-founder Tiffany Justice. Moms for Liberty being the super conservative group that is going around and spearheading the book ban movement, targeting multiple award-winning books about race or sexuality, with none of its members in any way being literary or literature professionals or having any real scope of how they are supposed to judge these things. It mostly just comes down to, oh, it has LGBTQ in it, ban it, and Joy does a great job exposing this hypocrisy. Let's start here.
Let me show you a form. This is a form that can be obtained in Broward County, Florida. Okay. I'm going to show it to the audience, and then I'm going to show it to you. Okay. This is called the opt. Yeah, please. I'm going to hand it to you. Thank you so much. It's called the opt-out form.
Okay.
An opt-out form would allow any parent, because you said you are in favor of parental rights.
I am.
It would allow any parent to opt out of their child being able to take books out of the library without their parents' permission.
Okay.
So that Moms for Liberty, why not advocate that every school in America have an opt-out form so that a parent who doesn't want their child to access a book like All Boys Aren't Blue, that they can make that choice? Because then each parent, including a liberal parent, a black parent, a parent who wants their child to read a book about African-American history, then they get their rights.
We want children to read books about
Why not just
African-American
opt
history,
out for yourself rather than tell other parents what they can and cannot?
First of all, I think what you're talking about here is a wonderful step in the right direction.
It's because she doesn't really want that. In her eyes, if every parent gets to choose, parents are going to let their kids read these books that have the LGBTQ material in it, and that might make them gay. And then gay kids being around her kids might make her kids gay. So can't have that. There's no answer for something like this because it destroys her entire worldview. Obviously, if this is her perspective, the right answer is these opt-out forms. It's not a good starting place, as she stuttered at the end there. It's not these blanket bans where a few people are then making the decisions for the majority.
Because the question becomes then who gets to decide what all kids get to read. The Washington Post took a look at about 1,000+ book challenges that were filed, and they found that they were filed nationwide by just 11 people. Each of these people brought 10 or more challenges against books in their school district. Together, these serial filers constituted 6% of all book challengers, but they were responsible for 60% of filings. In Florida, Tampa Bay Times, they found that of roughly 1,100 complaints recorded in Florida since July 2022, we're talking about more than 700 just from 2 counties, Escambia in the Western Panhandle and Clay County. Together, those are less than 3% of the public school enrollment, 600 of those complaints, 2 people. Why should 13 people get to decide what books tens of thousands of children get to read?
Well, I'm thinking it's probably because those 13 people saw what some of the content was in the books.
Right. The much more clear explanation is that these 13 people have a mission, have an agenda, have vendettas, but instead, to her, they're these noble heroes who are the only ones noticing what's happening in these books getting snuck into schools. And if you're scared that a book might change how someone thinks, you're not scared of books, you're scared of thinking, especially when they're banning books like Hunger Games, Harry Potter, The Great Gatsby. If you don't want your kids reading these books, teach them not to read these books. Don't act like you can play mom for somebody else's kids, though. And by removing them from a free school library, you're effectively taxing parents who are okay with their kids reading these books.
Were they not having to go through, and they actually have to read the full book to make a decision as to whether to make a recommendation for the book to be banned. Were they not doing that, what they would be doing is literacy education.
No,
what they would be doing is literacy education. That is what they're not doing because they're spending time on your book ban requests.
And this is absolutely ridiculous.
But it's true.
But it's not, Joy, because school districts do lots of things very, very well
with
at the
very
same
little,
time.
with very little funding.
And you actually make a great point because there was no vetting process for a lot of these materials in the library.
And what is the expertise of Moms for Liberty to do the vetting?
Oh my gosh,
normally what a school board would do, you were on a school board, you would hire experts and have expert voices come in,
parents
and people who are
kids.
sociologists, people who are library science,
parents are the
and those are the people who would make decisions.
Unironically, parents are not experts. Most parents have absolutely no idea what they're doing, and hot take, I don't think it's healthy to pass your biases and convoluted worldview onto your kids. Let the experts at these things be the experts. And Joy is exactly right. Public schools are massively underfunded as is, and when you're directing resources away from what matters the most, you're hurting these kids much more than you could ever help them in the long run. They should be focusing on literacy, but instead they're focusing on these wild goose chase calls about books every single week just because a kid's parent found out that it says gay in it 10 times. And then they have to go and read this entire book to see, should we ban it? Should we not? And that's just a waste of time, a waste of resources, and a waste of these already understaffed schools' staff. I'm sorry to tell you, but if your kid reads a book and turns out being gay for the rest of his life, he was always gay.
New York spends about $26,000 per student.
40,000.
26,000.
40,000.
And
Joy.
in Florida, it's about $10,000. So we're talking about much less money. The requirement in some of these schools, they don't even have a school librarian because the school actually doesn't have enough money.
Isn't that awful?
Instead of spending their time
Joy.
going through your book bans, they could actually be focusing on hiring library science technicians
who
can
actually do the job. We don't have a funding problem in American public education. We have a priorities problem.
And the priorities ought to be that each parent, including liberal parents, should be able to make their own decisions about what their children read.
I think we can agree on that.
Then I think that moms for liberty should not be making those decisions for them on their behalf.
Wow, she destroyed her right here in less than a minute. The second you seriously try to claim that education does not have a funding problem in America, you've lost. It's evident that's the case. And did you see how hard she tries to push 40K, 40K, you're wrong, Joy, until she realized that even more so went against her about Florida itself being underfunded. What Moms for Liberty is trying to do is push their parenting and their worldview onto everyone, instead of letting parents parent. Where 13 people have controlled most of these book bans, they just don't want kids reading diverse literature. They want them reading and seeing things with people who look just like them. This is oppression. It's tyranny of the minority, and I'm glad that Joy had her on to expose her hypocrisy. This isn't someone who values parents having the choice. If she did, she would have been on board with the opt-out forms. It's someone who wants to take exactly that away from parents who she disagrees with.